Rules Committee come to order, and thank you very much for joining us this evening with an opportunity for us to engage our membership. Does the distinguished gentleman from Illinois wish to give testimony? Yes, sir. Please, if the gentleman, Mr. Shimkus, the young chairman from Illinois, please join us. Mr. Shimkus, I want to thank you for taking time. It's late in Washington, but early in Illinois, and so you're just on time. But the committee is excited about you joining us this evening, and without objection, anything that the gentleman brought in writing would be entered in the record. Distinguished gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two amendments we hope that we would consider in moving this package on the continuing resolution. The first one is 009, and obviously I think the copies are being, as we speak, being printed. Let me kind of cut to the chase on both the amendments. The first one mirrors what we passed collectively, all my colleagues here, 340 to 72. The authorization bill for the Nuclear Waste Policy Act amendments. Bipartisan. Actually, more Democrats voted for this bill than opposed it. And it moves us forward in this debate on what we call in the vernacular closing the nuclear waste fuel cycle, closing the fuel cycle, which is what do you do with the waste? Not just spent nuclear fuel, but for those who are interested in the defense debate, very critical component of our national defense strategy is obviously our nuclear navy and our nuclear arsenal. When we create a nuclear navy, when we create our nuclear arsenal, there is waste that is developed through that process. And if we don't address that waste, our inability to continue to create the weapons that keep us safe is diminished. That's not debatable. It's a fact, and I would just refer to the Department of Energy, who is the steward of trying to manage this. So amendment, I think, 009 really follows the HR 3053, which was passed, again, as I mentioned, 340 to 72. And it addresses long-term storage, it addresses interim storage, it addresses us moving forward and trying to solve this problem. It prioritizes interim storage for the first time in the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. It authorizes $150 million over 3 years for DOE to partner with non-federal entities. So it allows, in the case of Dr. Burgess, for a location in West Texas, for private sector entities to store this for a short time. Now, that short time in the nuclear world is 40 or 50 years. It protects taxpayers. Do you know that we pay $100 million a year?
Yes, sir, I do.
In the judgment fund? That's not budgeted, not appropriated. So this addresses that, because the only reason why we will stop paying these legal fees is if wow, shocking, we follow the law. I mean, wouldn't that be shocking for us to do, follow the law? So that's that provision. And it provides the authority for the Secretary to transfer unobligated funds, no more than $120 million to be used for licensing and interim storage, and no more than $30 million of these funds to the NRC. There's two provisions that's in the President's budget and in what we passed in the House side in our appropriation. In fact, we passed more than what I'm asking for in this amendment. We passed like $267 million on the House budget, and we're asking for $120 million for the DOE and $30 million for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The playing field is this, is that the Obama administration, and unfortunately the last 2 years of Republican control, we've been able to stop the legal process of adjudicating the science. In other words, debating whether the NRC science has been sufficient to claim that the long-term repository is safe. So this $30 million is just to follow the law and allow that to be litigated. And so that's what the First Amendment does. I thought my Democrat colleagues would be here because I think it would be important, but, you know, from going left to right, in Texas, there's 2,700 metric tons of nuclear waste, and you voted in support of HR 3053. My colleague and great friend from Oklahoma supported the bill. They have no nuclear waste. I wish you would in this debate. This might help. Obviously, the gentleman from Georgia has 3,100 metric tons of nuclear waste, supported the bill. Congressman Burgess, 2,700 metric tons of nuclear waste, supported the bill. My colleague from Georgia is not here. Obviously, from Alabama, 3,900 metric tons of nuclear waste, supported the bill. Dan Newhouse, I've been to the district. I've been to, obviously, his challenges out there with the defense waste portion of that. He's got 799 metric tons of nuclear waste, supported the bill. Gentleman from Colorado is not here. They have nuclear waste. He supported the bill. And the gentlelady from Wyoming, no nuclear waste. She supported the bill, and I appreciate that. On the other side, they're not present. I wish they were. They have a lot of nuclear waste in their states. And the gentlelady from California has a lot of nuclear waste, and part of our provisions is trying to address how do you get the nuclear waste off the fault lines and what we call the ring of fire next to the oceans. This is the provisions that we have in this bill. So I would hope that you guys have a unique opportunity. I know what this committee is about. 22 years, Chairman, you and I are classmates. I know what you're tasked to do. What I'm asking you to do is do what's right. And what's right is allow me to have this vote on the floor. 340 to 72, we'll pass it. Kick it back to the Senate. Let them eat it. That's what I'm asking you to do. So hopefully you'll accept that. If not, I've got amendment number 10, which is a slimmed down version. It basically allows, full transparency, you all know I've been working on this probably religiously for 10 years. The more you know, the more you know you don't know. And as I moved up the chain, the Senate has been an intractable force that I've had to try to learn and deal with. We have a president that supports this. It's been in both his budgets. We have a Department of Energy that wants to move forward. And so working closely with after I asked them for their support, right? That's the way the process works. They're not going to voluntarily lobby. But if you ask them, what can we do to solve this problem, they have to respond to legislators in trying to address the process through the executive branch. So in close cooperation with the Department of Energy, they have multiple funds that they have not spent. There is money available for them to solve these problems. Amendment 10 just allows them to do that. It allows them to be able to go to get $30 million from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It allows them to go to get $120 from the Department of Energy. And it allows us then to move forward on this problem. Had a great visit with the speaker on the floor during the last series of votes. I know the committee you serve on. I know that he has been working very diligently to solve this problem. He has come across an intractable force, which is the other chamber. Without the Democrats here, there's no excuse for you all not to make one of these two amendments in order and to allow us to have a vote on the floor of the House and then send this freaking continuing resolution back to the Senate and force them to eat it. You all have nowhere to hide. The waste is in your states. We have not addressed this problem. This is something Ronald Reagan started in 1982, amended in 87, to solve a problem that goes back to the Cold War. Eisenhower said, we need the nuclear arsenal to keep us safe. We also need nuclear energy to work with our defense sector so that we have the brightest minds in this sector. We will accept the liability of the waste. That is where we are. And it's in your hands. I hate to put it on it. I wish it would have resolved earlier. But you all here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I always point to say, who stopped this? Who made it happen? 7 people right here. You can solve this problem. With that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for time, and I'm open for any questions.
Mr. Shimkus, thank you very much. I argued this on the floor in 1997 with Dennis Kucinich, who was a member of the Government Reform Committee, when we spoke about the interstate commerce angle that was directly related to this. And I remember well the arguments. I think we also pay money for the storage. Perhaps that was part of what you were in reference to. And the opportunity for us to pay as long as this provision. What is the law today?
Well, we're breaking the law because we were, per the law, required to be able to receive spent fuel and defense waste in, I think, 2002.
Okay.
So because of that, the nuclear power industry sued the federal government. And that's why we annually pay $800 million a year in legal fees, because we don't comply with the law.
So let me see if I've got this right. We're legislatively trying to fix the law. It was my understanding that because of political considerations, which could have meant a president of the United States who chose, or maybe out of courtesy to, let's say, a senator.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you yield, I'll tell you exactly what happened.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, why can't this administration apply the law? Why?
Well, because all spending begins in the House.
I'm sorry, the law. So we're authorizing money to do something that the law allows. Is that it? So it's an authorization, not an appropriation. This would be an appropriation.
If the chairman would yield, the authority is there by law. We have failed to appropriate.
That's just appropriations.
So we have broken the law by not funding the appropriation. It started back in the Obama administration, based upon a political promise made to Senator Reid. I've been fighting it through that 8 years. And now we have a president who supports it. We have not been able to get the other chamber to appropriate the money. We have, with respect to my colleagues in the House. This is a chance to rectify this, because given it, the other chamber hasn't voted on any language since 2002. We voted on this issue this year with a vote of 340 to 72.
Yes, sir.
Again, it's in your laps.
Yes, sir.
You can fix this.
Okay. Chairman Cole?
Well, thank you. This is a difficult situation because I support what you're trying to do. Voted for what you're trying to do, and think what you're trying to do is the right thing. But we're talking about whether or not we can, get something through the other side and to the president's desk, who, as you rightly point out, supports this. And I'm not convinced that we can. I suppose I have zero reservations with what you're trying to do, but we're not totally independent actors here. I We work with our leadership to try and put something on the floor we think can pass, not just our chamber, but the next chamber and on to the president. And that makes me very leery that we can get to where you want to go and where I want to go. I don't have any questions because, again, I agree with your argument. But at the end of the day, you know, the basic thing is we have to pass the legislation in front of us to keep the government functioning and to move forward. And I'm not sure that this will help us in that regard. But I would yield to my friend for whatever response he cares to make.
I would say you're absolutely wrong. This bill, from the Republican perspective, has no chance of a majority Republican vote. So if you want to give this bill a chance to pass, this amendment helps that. But standalone as it is, if this bill passes, it'll be passed by Democrat votes, and the can will get kicked down to February in a new House. So I totally reject that premise. And the only hope for passage in the House would be considering this, one of these two amendments, and maybe some others that my colleagues may bring forth.
Fair argument, but how's it get through the Senate?
I think nuclear waste management policies, given an up and down vote on the Senate, would exceed 60 votes. I have no doubt. We just had a first letter
It's not 50 votes.
I
It's
said 60. I said 60.
Okay.
And I will tell you that we just last week had a letter written by 11 Republican senators to Senator Shelby. And none of them were appropriators, because appropriators don't want to write letters to themselves. But this was 11 senators who wrote letters to Shelby saying they support this very provision.
Republican Senate.
Republican senators.
How about Democratic Senate?
Well, let's put them on record and have them vote.
Do you have any Democratic senators who vote for this?
And I would ask a Republican
Look,
leader.
look,
I would
I
ask
agree
a
with you.
Republican leader in the
I'm on your
House
side.
to worry
I agree
about the
with you.
House and not worry about Democrat senators who are in the minority in the U.S. Senate. I understand that for someone who doesn't have defense waste or nuclear waste in their state. I get that. But 31 states, 120 locations have been dealing with this with no solution from this national government. I mean, in the last 10 years. You all know that. You're not looking at me in the eye. You all have this stuff in your freaking states. And we need to resolve this. And as much as you guys want to hide behind
Mr. Shimkus.
Speaker Ryan,
Mr. Shimkus.
this is your choice. And I'm not letting you guys off the hook.
Mr. Shimkus, just so we have a quick discussion, I believe that what you're saying is absolutely correct. What I would say is that the challenge to this committee is one which I appreciate and respect, but I want the gentleman to know that the people who serve on this committee do so for the entire majority. And it will be something that we're going to have to discuss. And there isn't a person on here that really privately or publicly does not agree with you. There is not a person that does not. We are honor-bound on a number of things in this committee, and you know that. This is why it is a committee that also can find a way to work towards your solution. But
Mr. Chairman, if you yield, I would just say.
I would yield.
10 years. 10 years. You know how many times I've heard that language to me?
Yes, sir.
10 years worth.
But I'm not here to tell you no. What I'm trying to suggest to you is that you're giving a proper observation and fervency towards an issue that each one of us agree with. And if you will allow us a chance to see this through, I don't think that it's that we don't agree with you. I think that it has a lot to do with some negotiation and timing that's got to take place. There are some very tough things that are going on, and the gentleman is aware of it in this town to avoid what might be a government shutdown. But I don't think one person in here isn't willing to stay all the way through to January 3rd. The problem is what's on the other side of January 3rd.
Mr. Chairman, if you, I'll just say, all I want is vote.
And this is why I appreciate you, John. And when you walked in tonight and I welcomed you, my heart, my soul, everything about me is with you. All I'm saying is that we look at each other as brothers in this, and we're going to try and work something through.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I can ask for.
And
Is
and that is what I ask of you, too. Does the gentleman wish to continue?
Just one
Gentleman's
thing.
right.
I've known my friend probably longer than anybody at this table. Because my friend ran for Congress in 1992 when I was ED at the NRCC. We, what was euphemistically called maxed out to my friend. He wasn't successful in that election. He ran in 1996 again and won. And there's nobody I admire more than my friend who served our country, went to West Point, majored in the paratroops, and just an unbelievably great member. So I take anything my friend says seriously, and we'll see what we can do. With that, I yield back, Mr.
Thank you very much. And I do, the spirit in which you have approached this is most diligent. I appreciate the gentleman. Distinguished gentleman from Georgia. The distinguished gentleman from Georgia does not seek time. The distinguished gentleman from Texas does not seek time. The distinguished gentleman from Alabama does not seek time. The distinguished gentleman from the state of Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, I want to thank Mr. Shimkus for bringing this issue forward. As in my district, near the banks of the Columbia River, we have in 177 underground storage tanks over 56 million gallons of nuclear waste. And it's destined for the very place that Mr. Shimkus is advocating for. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your fervent leadership on this issue. And I think I could tell you, I can't make the decision for them, but I think I probably know of at least 2 senators in the Democratic side that would support this. But at least my guess is that they would. So I hope we can do something here for this effort, and appreciate, Mr. Chairman, your words of support for the issue in the process. And the gentleman from Illinois, as you know, brings a lot of energy and fervent desire to solve this problem for the nation, and I admire that, and I just hope we can do something. But thank you.
Gentleman goes back. By the way, in Pasco, Washington, if you get off the airplane there and you walk into the terminal, there is on the wall, you had a nuclear site there. And there is a chemical equation on the side. I did not take enough chemistry to remember it, so I took a picture of it and sent it to my son, Bill, who's in medical school. And I said, "What does this say?" And he said, "Dad, it's something about nuclear fusion. It is in your backyard, and it is time to do something. And the distinguished gentleman from Illinois is here for the right reason, and it's not himself. It's our country. And we feel very strongly about this, Mr. Shimkus, and that's why I wanted to let you know we're kind of batting with each other here. So I appreciate the gentleman's words. The distinguished
Mr.
gentleman.
Chairman, can I respond to the
Excuse me.
chairman?
The gentleman controls the time.
The gentleman, yeah.
Absolutely yield, yes.
Just briefly, I want to thank him. I've been out to Hanford. I served in the active military during the Cold War, and we had a strategy called mutually assured destruction. It's not a world in which you want to live under, but it was the work at Hanford that allowed us to keep us safe. And now they live under that legacy. And we're just trying to help them clean up the site. That's all. We're just asking them to we're just asking the federal government to comply with the law. And I appreciate what your constituents have done. I've been out there, as you know, and we're free today because of the work that the folks have done in your district. And I thank you for letting me yield back.
I'll yield back to the chair.
Gentleman yields back his time. Thank you very much. Very nice. The distinguished gentlewoman from Wyoming does not seek time. Mr. Shimkus, I have written you a note. It is my hope, one way or another, I have no clue what is going to happen tomorrow on this bill. I have no clue in speaking to the President of the United States. I have no clue in talking to my colleagues. What I can tell you is that I agree with you a lot, and that negotiation has been well represented, not only by your side for 10 years, but actually you showing up at 11 o'clock tonight is something that you should be commended for, and so I'll do that myself.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll just be brief in closure. Thank you for your time. And it's in your hands. I know you have other powers to deal with, but I would just end with all I'm asking for is a vote. And let's instead of us having to carry the weight of the world and accept what the Senate gives us, let's give them something back. And I yield back.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I'm going to have the clerk that will pass this note to you, Mr. Shimkus. Thank you very much. I appreciate your help. Is there any other member that would seek to come before the Rules Committee today? The distinguished gentleman from Ohio we're delighted that you're here. The gentleman from Pennsylvania. Gentlemen, anything you brought in writing will be, without objection, will be entered the record. And the distinguished gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me first thank you for your amazing service to this committee, to your constituents, to the Congress, and of course to our great country. We really appreciate all you've done. Mr. Chairman, there's an old line that says, and we're all familiar with it, says, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." I think we're going to have to change that line. I think it's now going to have to read, "Fool the American people 4 times, shame on Congress." Because 4 different times this year, we have promised them that we would put money in the spending bill and actually build a border security wall. In March, in the big omnibus bill, we said, nope, we're not going to do it now, but we'll get it done in September. And September said, well, nope, we're not going to do it in September. We'll do it on December 7th. And then, of course, on December 7th said, no, wrong again. We're going to do it on December 21st. And now here we are with a bill that just was voice voted in the Senate that says, wait a minute, we're actually going to get it done on February 8th, which nobody in the country believes. None of our constituents believe it. No one believes it. We actually think we're going to actually build a border security wall when Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House. So we've had all kinds of opportunities to get it done. This is our last best chance. So we have an amendment that would do just that. Put $5 billion for a border security wall that we've all talked about doing, all campaigned on, all got elected on. Actually, there was another chance we had to do it. And I think the best opportunity, frankly, was last week, right after the president in the Oval Office told Congresswoman Pelosi that it was appropriate to talk about this. They didn't need to do it in a private setting. Transparency is a good thing. And he said, we need the border security wall. The best time to do it would have been last week, right after the president made those comments. So this amendment is real basic. It says build the border security wall and then address the problem that we've seen unfold on our border the last several months, specifically the caravan issue. The only way you can address that is by reforming our asylum laws. That's in the amendment as well. So it's as basic. It doesn't go any further. No E-Verify, no sanctuary cities, no visa lottery, nothing else on immigration policy. Those 2 key common sense things that all of you know, all of our constituents know, definitely need to happen. And so that's what we brought before you. We hope you'll make it in order. In many ways, it's the same argument our colleague, Mr. Shimkus, just made It's just a different issue. So we hope you'll make it in order, and we can get a vote on it tomorrow on the floor. And my colleague here is a sponsor of it, as well as are a number of other members of the Freedom Caucus. But if I could, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Sir, thank you very much. The distinguished gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me take this opportunity, it's late in the evening and late in the year as well, to thank you for your service on this committee. And even though things haven't always gone the way that I've wanted to when I've come here, I don't think that anybody could argue that there'd be a finer person to run this committee in a more upstanding fashion than what you have. And every single one of us that's been privileged to serve in this body has recognized that and been thankful for your candor and the way you've comported yourself. And you've been a role model for all of us, and I appreciate that. And I want to say thank you for your service and Godspeed for whatever's next, and we hope that we get to continue to see you. With that having been said, really goes to the fundamental promise that we've made, each one of us in this room, I suspect, to the American people. And we've had, with this president and his victory in 2016, this is the seminal issue that he ran on, that the American people put front and center. And we've had 2 years to get to this, and we have not completed the mission in any way, shape, or form. And the American people are frustrated. They are tired of waiting, and they are tired of excuses. And we are all supporters of legal immigration, every single one of us. I'm the proud product of a Colombian great-grandmother who brought her little baby daughter with her to Colombia with the shirts on their backs and a little bit of a trade that they could make a living for themselves legally. And so we recognize that and we laud that, and we want to continue that. The United States is the most generous country on the planet regarding immigration, and particularly legal immigration, but that doesn't mean that it is the same as illegal immigration. There is a cost to that. There's a cost to our communities. I live in Pennsylvania. We have high property taxes where senior citizens can barely keep their homes for paying their property taxes. The property taxes are oftentimes much more than their mortgages ever were, that were paid off years before. Yet we spend at least $1.3 billion in Pennsylvania annually to deal with illegal immigration, education, hospitalization, incarceration. All those things add up, Mr. Chairman. And then, of course, there's the fentanyl circumstance and the opioid circumstance that is happening in every single one of our communities. It's been up at the crossings of fentanyl at the border, the seizures, up 750% just this year alone. It's on the border today. It's in your town tomorrow. I talked to 2 of my DAs just today about another issue who both told me that 1 person a day in each county is dying due to fentanyl overdoses, and all the overdoses are due to fentanyl. It's coming across an unsecured border. And then there's depression of wages. If you just leave high school early, you drop out of high school, your average earning potential in the United States is about $25,000 a year. Over the past 20 years, we've had so much illegal immigration that comports with no high school education, now competing with those individuals, trying to make a go of it without a high school education in the United States of America, suppressing their wages. And no one's standing up for those people in our towns that live and were born in America. There's a lot of components to this, Mr. Chairman, and those are just a few. But it really goes down to the promise we've made, and we're at the 11th hour here. And this is the last train out of the station. This is our last opportunity. If anybody believes that a House under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi is going to do anything to secure the border, well, I don't know who would believe that. But let me just give you what this bill does. Mr. Jordan outlined it. I'll give you a couple more points here. It closes the asylum loopholes, which are really problematic, and provides $5 billion for the president's border security operation. Number 1, for credible fear. That's people that come to the border claiming credible fear, saying that they seek asylum. It tightens that policy up and requires things like recording throughout the process, recording the interviews and making sure that information is available. Since 2008, from 2008 to 2016, asylum claims have gone from 4,000 to 94,000. This is an epidemic problem at the border. Number 2, it fixes loopholes in the trafficking laws, which currently incentivize individuals to be trafficked. In the future, if this were to be passed, and you were found to not be trafficked, you'd be returned to the country of origin. Number 3, it overturns the Flores decisions, which requires that we must release people after detaining them for 20 days. In the last 2 years, we've caught and released over 250,000 people under this circumstance. It must be stopped. Again, it provides $5 billion for border security, different types of security, whether it's a wall, whether it's a fence, whether it's technology, and it provides for 375 new immigration judges and their staff to reduce the backlog, which for asylee claims is just short of 800,000 right now. So it reduces that and then helps them to keep up. So that's what we're offering, Mr. Chairman. This is what we quite honestly promised the American people. It is our duty. I think most of the conference supports this. If we offer this amendment on the floor, I think most of our conference, by far, subject to just a couple who have an aversion for one reason or another, will support this amendment, and we can do what we promised the American people that we were going to do. And I ask and plead for your indulgence and your consideration and your approval of this amendment to come to the floor. And I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time.
Mr. Cole?
I just want to thank both gentlemen, and I want to associate myself with the gentleman from Pennsylvania's kind remarks about our chairman. Yield back.
Thank you very much. Distinguished gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm thinking about my colleague from Pennsylvania and the good work he's done while he's been here, and he always opens my eyes to see things in a different way. What he said that was not new to me is anybody who thinks that a House led by Nancy Pelosi is going to do a better job of border security than one led by folks like our chairman and others is kidding themselves. And I think he's absolutely right about that. Though, as I sit here with a continuing resolution that the Senate passed first and sent over here, I'm thinking I've got a stronger Senate next time than I do this time, and my president has put every single egg he has into this basket. He's worked on this as hard as he's worked on any issue, and he can't find 8 Democratic senators, 9 Democratic senators, 10 Democratic senators to help him get this done. And I am hopeful that in the same way that my friend has opened my eyes on so many other issues, he can help me with that one. I get it. I voted for every immigration bill that's gone through this body this year because I know it only gets worse from here. I voted for every border security bill that's come through this body because I know it only gets worse from here. Making a step in the right direction, to Mr. Jordan's point, you all didn't load this up with everything we want to get done. You slimmed it down as much as you thought you possibly could and still accomplish our national security goals. But if the president, because it is the 11th hour, if the president, as we sit here, has not been able to find those votes, and if he thinks he can find them by vetoing this bill, we're going to have that conversation too, and I welcome that conversation if we have it. But if he hasn't found them yet, knowing that you have to make this point, you have to take this stand, do you believe, can you see that pathway to finding those votes in the United States Senate that you and I need to make this the law of the land?
And I appreciate the opportunity, and your question is certainly valid, and certainly we've all considered this, and you have as well. We want to get something accomplished here, just not make a statement. This is about accomplishing something. And let me say this as well. You know, they passed this CR on a voice vote over there in the Senate, which quite honestly, I just find reprehensible. I mean, stand up and vote for something.
That doesn't suggest heavy lifting. No, it does not.
That's exactly right. And if there is an opportunity to veto something and ensure that senators stand up and vote so that their citizens, their bosses can see what they stand for, this is the time. That having been said, the president has tried mightily for this period of time and been unable to get 8 votes over there. And to your point that we'll have a stronger Senate in the next term, but we'll have a much weakened House. So it's Mox Nix, right? We are here right now, and the only thing that is going to inform us of what's going to happen in the Senate with those 8 Democrats is the House. doing the constitutional thing and passing the funding bill here and sending it there, irrespective of whatever they did over there. This is the people's house. This is a separate body. We are speaking on behalf of the people. If the Senate doesn't want to do that, that's their business, but we can. And then we can allow the pressure of the public and the presidency and the narrative, the discussion, the debate that's supposed to happen in public to bring those senators to where the American people are and have been. And let them say no. Let them say, well, it's okay if fentanyl comes into our town and kills one person a day in our county. It's okay to be involved, to be complicit in human trafficking of underage girls into prostitution. It's okay to suppress the wages of the people in my town so the people from some other country can come and avail themselves to America without us having any clue of what their intentions are, if they're terrorists or what have you. If they want to make that argument, now is the time. Let them make it, but they are not forced to make it. If they're going to voice vote something as important as this at 10:30 at night on the eve of Christmas almost, it's time to flush those folks out and say, what do you stand for? And that would be my case, sir.
Mr. Jordan?
Well, I would just say this. Last week in the Oval Office, Congresswoman Pelosi said that there weren't the votes in the House for this. I think there are. I think you all think there are. And one of the ways you win the debate is you create momentum and create pressure, and that helps you in the debate so you have a better opportunity, a greater chance of things passing in the Senate. But we will never get to that stage if we first don't pass it here and prove that she was wrong when she said there aren't the votes in the House. I think there are. I think we could have passed it last week. We had 219 Republicans here last week and 190 Democrats. I think we could have passed it last week and had a longer time to build momentum and create pressure. But we didn't choose that route. We can still do it tomorrow, and I hope we do.
Undeniably, those responsibilities lie here, and undeniably, what we do here affects the pressure that grows there. And undeniably, we don't know where folks are there, because on a voice vote, you don't find out where folks sit and what their issues are. Because of the leadership that you all have both taken on this issue, I have no doubt you know more about what's going on at agency level, at a White House level, than I do. And my question was absolutely not about what our responsibilities are here in the House. I recognize those just as you do. But is that what's next? Because I do care about what's next. As I know you all do. There are folks here who are trying to make a point. I know you're here tonight to make a difference, and that's valuable.
The other thing I would add to the gentleman from Georgia is we also, when you start to build momentum and create some pressure and have this debate, we also have a guy in the White House who's pretty good at conveying a message, pretty good at communicating. That's something, if you get to that point, I mean, that's why you play the game. That's why you kick the ball off. Use whatever metaphor you want, but that's why you do this and actually have a national debate where the country is engaged in watching. I think we're at that point. And I think it's, as we said several times, it's much better to do it now than it is to try to do it on February 7th and 8th.
There's a lot of pessimism and cynicism that I read in the political pages in this country, Mr. Chairman. You don't see any pessimism or cynicism sitting at the witness table here tonight, and I just want to recognize
see it from you either.
that, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Distinguished gentleman yields back his time. What we're doing is each thoughtfully trying to work this through, and we're delighted that both of you are here. No, you should take that the way it's meant. We're both delighted. I am delighted that you're here. Distinguished gentleman from Louisville, Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, as a practical matter, we do have a continuing resolution voice voted by the Senate. Not an abundance of courage, not a profiling courage in doing that. We don't have a statement of administration policy. I'm just a humble backbencher toiling in the vineyards here on the Rules Committee. You all are on the Freedom Caucus. You speak to the president and his advisors all the time. Is he going to veto this bill?
He's not going to veto it if our amendment's on it.
I'm not asking that. I'm asking as the bill that came through the Senate.
Yeah, I don't know. Mr. Burgess, I do not know.
And, you know, again, I'm not a member of the whip team. I don't know what their count was tonight. I expect it probably wasn't very good from our members.
Yeah, I'm sure it's bad.
just makes you wonder if what you describe is disclosed by another means, that is, the number of Republican members who vote against what the United States Senate did tonight. I don't know if there's enough to actually bring down the bill, but I know there's enough to sustain a presidential veto.
I think our colleague, Mr. Shimkus, talking about his issue, I think he may be right. My guess is there would be a hard time finding a majority of the Republicans in the United States Congress to support the continuing resolution in its current form.
Can I just add, while this is difficult, we don't know what they're going to do, what they might do, or what the president might do. We know this: we're going to miss 100% of the shots we never take.
And that's not the argument that I'm making. The argument that I'm making is we have to deal with the situation as it comes to us here at the Rules Committee. We're not the manufacturer, we're the consumer, oftentimes, of policy.
We certainly respect that, and you're in the difficult position that you're in as well.
So the Senate passed this hot mess and handed it off to us. I don't know whether they've left town or not. Mr. Jordan, you know this. We've been here before when another speaker was speaker, and we thought we could jam the Senate on something at Christmas time, and they just all left town. And we had nothing to send. There was no one to receive what we sent them. They said, our deal was the best deal you're going to get. And Speaker Boehner had to go back on his word on a conference call. Remember that? 2 or 3 days before Christmas? And he had to say, you know what, this thing's coming up tomorrow. We're going to pass it by unanimous consent. And that's the end of it. No more discussion. So we have been here before. We have been jammed by the United States Senate. So they send us this. None of them are recorded. I've got 2 senators in the state of Texas. Neither of them are recorded as yes or no on this. It's just a unanimous consent. I don't know if the smarter play here would not be to pursue a veto strategy. Again, I don't know what the whip numbers were tonight. I expect they were not very good. I don't know that that bothers anyone if they think they can pass this without a majority of the majority, because in 2 weeks we won't be the majority. But I do know this: I think we have the numbers to sustain a presidential veto. And I'm sitting here tonight trying to make a decision without a statement of administration policy. I'm not being critical of the president. This is our decision. But at the same time, we know his leadership on this issue is going to be critically important as to how this is going to turn out. I don't disagree with anything you said. Oh my God, I went down to Central America in August. I couldn't get a single Democrat to go with me.
I know you
Tried
told me.
to see what we could do to stop the problem that then turned into the migrant caravan a couple of months later. We all watched the videos of those people charging the border at San Ysidro and across from San Diego, and the border fence was as porous as anything you could imagine. People went through it, they went under it. Yes, the wall is necessary. I get that. Be happy to make that argument. But at the same time, tonight, what I've got is the United States Senate that basically mailed in a continuing resolution until February. I don't know where the White House is. And it leaves us in a tough position here on the Rules Committee.
And I appreciate it. I know the gentleman, when you did travel, we talked about your trip and the things you learned there, and that was valuable information. 2 things we should have done, or 2 differences, or 2 points I guess I'll make. One is we should have went last week when we should have passed it first. We had the votes here to do it, in my judgment.
Well, General Yield, we should have done this September 30th.
Well, yeah, we should have. Well, look, we've had 4 occasions to do it, but last week when the president makes his statement in the Oval Office, we should have taken the bill up the next day. Second, the difference between now and when it was Speaker Boehner is we have someone in the White House who agrees with us. I mean, that's a lot better odds. It's a lot better position to be in. So that's why we're advocating, okay, the Senate's done what they've done. We didn't pass it last week like we should have. We didn't pass it in March and September and December 7th like we should have. But here we are. Let's at least do the right thing now and send it back over to the Senate.
I think the vote, if I may, the vote is going to be instructive. If we vote on this tomorrow with no changes, which, I mean, I've been up here long enough to know that's likely the scenario, but I think that vote is going to be instructive. Again, I'm not privy to any conversations with the president, like the gentleman from Ohio is. But I, to the extent that they're listening, I think a veto of this bill would be something that could be sustained.
There's not a majority of our party. I think, I don't know, but I think the White House is against it then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Thank you very much. Most interesting. Gentlemen, you're now seeing some of the discussion that takes place behind the closed doors that we have already begun. And I appreciate your professionalism in dealing with us as we are working through this as a committee. Distinguished gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share both of your frustration. I'll be honest with you, I whipped no on the bill when it was whipped tonight. And I whipped no because I want a wall. I voted for the wall every time I've been given a chance to vote a wall. Did you know there's a bill pending in the House of Representatives that's been vetted by the parliamentarian in the Senate that would allow us to pass a bill that would fully fund the wall, not at $5 million, but at $25 million, without requiring a single Democrat vote? Did you know that?
Yep.
The 50 Votes for the Wall Act.
Yep.
It's my bill.
I know.
Not going to see the light of day. So I share your frustration. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. But the truth of the matter is that we've got the CR that I do not support. I don't know what the whip count was. My guess is, listening to the people around me, it wasn't really good from our side. But we're going to see what we're going to do with it tomorrow, one way or the other. But whatever we do with that, we still have to deal with the immigration issue, not just the wall, but the other issues that y'all brought up. This is the end of my 5th year here. The beginning of my 1st year here, we were at a Republican conference retreat at some place in Maryland, and the leadership passed out some elements of a plan. And I remember, as a brand new member of the House of Representatives, that it was dead before we even got a chance to talk about it. I literally got tweets from constituents saying, please don't vote for something. I didn't even know what he was talking about. We're not going to get anywhere if we don't talk about this directly and openly and honestly and understand how many votes we have, how many votes we don't have to pass what it's going to take to make a common sense approach to the immigration laws in this country. Mr. Perry, all of us are the descendants of immigrants, unless you're Mr. Cole. And Mr. Cole is not. But the vast majority of us are the descendants of immigrants. My ancestors came here before we had immigration laws. That's when we were just looking for anybody who would come to this country, you know. But we are in a different situation now, and we need a system of laws that regulates the number of people that come here and the process by which you come here. It's called the rule of law, and we've gotten away from the rule of law. And the people in my district who are the most opposed to just let anybody walk across the border are people who have gone through the naturalization process. They will chew your head off about this. And the idea that we can't listen to them, listen to our constituents about what it takes to secure our borders and secure the people just is unfathomable to me. So I wanted to let you know that whatever the outcome is tonight, there are more than one person, probably everybody around this table, that shares your frustration and is looking for solutions. I wish we could take all of our passion and bottle it up, put it in a room with some common sense, and come up with something we all walk out that door and say, that's it. And I want you both to know that I believe strongly in that. I know where you are, and I agree with you. Let's work together, do what we can, and make the best out of what's going to happen tomorrow. And I don't know what that is. But you guys know me well enough to know I mean every word that I'm saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Distinguished gentleman yields back his time. Gentlemen, you are beginning to see some of the, not just wisdom, but the extreme responsibility that is placed on this committee. We do understand. We understand a lot of things, including the desire not at Christmas time to do something that might wish we had not. So we're delighted that you're both here, distinguished gentlemen from the state of Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the gentleman from Ohio and Pennsylvania being here this evening, or this morning, almost. couple things. I took it upon myself, as many of us have, to go to the border, see firsthand the situation that we face there, and came away fully confident in knowing and being told from the folks that we have asked to do an almost impossible job of securing our border, that they need more resources. Absolutely do. And I think majority of my constituents agree with that. And so many of the things that you've said tonight, I'm sure there are many people listening that also agree. And so I just want to acknowledge that, and that this is one of the most important issues that we face as a nation. And thank you for that's doing such a good job of vocalizing not only the problem, but the solution. In your opening comments, Mr. Jordan, and I can never quote this, but fool me once, fool me twice scenario. What commitment have you heard that even in February there will be a vote on border security? I mean, is there something? If we don't do it, in my humble opinion, this is probably the last best chance to do anything.
I don't buy it, but that's what we've heard.
Oh, I have not heard that.
We're kicking this bill to February 8th.
The CR,
CR goes to February 8th.
but the,
Has none of this on it, so
right, and
it's going to be a fight. It's certainly not going to be before then if we
And
don't do it now.
there likely would be a less chance of winning any border security fight then than
Exactly.
here. So, okay,
Exactly.
that's, I thought maybe there was something that I wasn't aware of that. Okay. But just want to thank you, gentlemen, for bringing this to us this evening. And like Mr. Byrne, no, I don't know that anybody knows the outcome of tomorrow's, if there's a vote tomorrow right now. In its current form, it's going to be interesting.
If I may, Mr. Newhouse, we don't know. We don't know where the president is. We don't even know where the senators are because they voice voted. And none of us know how our senators would have voted if they would have had to say, I'm Senator so-and-so from this state and I vote A or nay. We don't know that. But we know if we surrender tomorrow, that the country will see that the House has given up on an issue that is very, very important to them. And we also know if we fight, even if we fail, even if the Senate, even if those members are on planes right now headed home, that the American people will know that one body in Washington, D.C. hears their cries and will stand up and do something about it. And if that's all there is, at least that will start the conversation. We cannot take the opportunity to just fold up because the Senate might jam us and leave. We are a separate body. It is our duty to do our job here. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But that's no reason to shirk our responsibility, in my opinion.
I appreciate that. And, consent indicates to me that you agree, unanimous. Sounds to me like everybody agreed, so it's pretty clear to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Marvelous conversation, gentlemen. The distinguished gentlewoman from the state of Wyoming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to join my colleagues in thanking you both for being up here. I think that we're clearly in a situation where the right thing to do is to secure the border. We find ourselves once again in a situation where our colleagues on the other side of the Capitol have done less than what's necessary. And I don't know any members who have done more than you guys have in terms of coming up here repeatedly, willing to be up here late hours, when usually it's just Rules Committee up here to fight for what's right. And so I appreciate your doing that, and we'll have to sort through what we're going to do on it. But thank you for your time and for your commitment to the issue. Yield back.
Yields back her time. Gentlemen, thank you very much. If you'll please recall that at the beginning of this, that anything you brought in writing will be left for awesome stenographer, and thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chairman, before we release the panel, I'd
Excuse me just a moment, please. If the gentleman will please stay just another minute. Thanks, gentlemen.
just like to offer the observation that the fact that we're here at the hour that we are, minority party is not here on the other side of the dais, under no definition are we shirking our responsibility. We're here performing our responsibility.
Yes.
Don't think I was implying that. I think we're all very passionate about that, about this, and I understand what's at stake here. And even if we pass this with this amendment in it. Let's say we take this to the floor tomorrow, this amendment passes, and we pass the CR with this and send it back to the Senate, and, they don't like it. We're still here for a few days. We're still being paid. The American people expect us to do our work. We're not done yet. So we should do as much as we can while we can. And,
We've got ample time left in the year. Yeah, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen, just about time. I would like to say, and I'm delighted that the gentleman said what he said. You have properly, both of you, come to us, all of us. I do not know right now what we're going to do, but in a minute, as you leave, we're going to go into recess. And we're going to talk about this. And I have always believed that all of us are smarter than any one of us. What I would ask you to understand is whatever we decide, we believe in and we're going to have to fight for. But I will also say that there are circumstances that we find ourselves under that we have to take those into account. And so I would just say to you that both of you have done your duty. You have helped us out, and I want to thank both of you very much. I hope you have a safe evening. Okay, the committee has tonight offered itself without the availability of us conferencing, the ability to gather together to hear challenges of these amendments. We also recognize that the news of the passage of the Senate bill, I thought, as I was several hours ago, that this would be done. I did not know it was done by voice vote. I'm going to ask that we be at the subject to the call of the chair for recess at this time. Not really.